Cancer. So the cell cycle is regulated by signals that inhibit or promote the cell cycle. This makes sure that a cell lives and dies at the right time. But occasionally there are cells that continue to grow and divide and they never die. Or they live longer than their regular cycle. This condition is known as cancer. Cancer is a disease of the cell cycle that leads to an imbalance, and it results from mutations, accumulation of many mutations within the cell cycle regulation process. It is a disease in which cellular reproduction occurs repeatedly without end. Typically in cancer, two types of cells may be mutated that leads to cancer. Number one, we have proto-oncogenes. Proto-oncogenes are genes that code for proteins that promote the cell cycle and inhibit programmed cell death. They are often likened to the gas pedal of a car because they accelerate the cell cycle process. Then we have what we call tumor suppressor genes. Tumor suppressor genes. While proto-oncogenes are like the gas pedal, tumor suppressor genes are the brakes. They code for proteins that inhibit the cell cycle and promote apoptosis. These two types of genes, when they work together, they make sure that the cell cycle goes well. One promotes the cell cycle, one inhibits it, making sure that cells live and die at the right time. Now, when proto-oncogenes mutate, they are referred to as oncogenes. Okay. Let's talk about the characteristics of cancer. The number one characteristic of cancer I want you to remember is that it comes from a lot of mutations. Okay? Cancer typically happens due to mutations in proto-oncogenes and tumor suppressor genes. These mutations can happen as a result of carcinogens in the environment, and they could also be inherited mutations. Okay? Now, other characteristics of cancer include uncontrolled proliferation, which means these cells continue to divide endlessly. Number three, we have abnormal differentiation, and what that means is that the cells typically should go from a stem stage to an adult stage, but a lot of cancer cells never get to the adult stage. They just get arrested at some point and they continue dividing, so they never truly contribute to the well-being of the individual. They're just these underdeveloped cells that keep dividing endlessly. Okay, number four is that they have reduced dependence on growth factors. So remember those signals that make cells divide and stop dividing. The cancer cells, they don't depend on those signals. They ignore those signals. Sometimes they produce their own signals, and so they tell themselves when to divide versus when not to divide. Number five, they secrete proteases. Now, the function of this, a protease digests proteins. Now, there are proteins that attach a cell to whatever location it's found in the body. Okay? Now, these cancer cells are able to secrete proteases that digest those proteins, allowing a cancer cell to move from one location of the body to another location of the body. That's when it moves and it spreads throughout the body. Okay, that's called metastasis. All right, number six, we have angiogenesis, promotion of angiogenesis. Typically, cancer cells are able to promote formation of blood vessels that connect them to resources of the body that other cells may not get as much of. So they are able to hijack resources of the body and take it all to themselves. And also, I think I'm going to stop here. Number 7, they have typically capacity for unlimited replication. They just keep keep going, they keep going, and they keep going. They mostly do not die. So these are characteristics of cancer cells. Now, finally, how do we prevent cancer? There's an old quote that says, if you live long enough, you will get cancer. And that's because our bodies are not perfect, and our cells deteriorate and our control mechanisms deteriorate. But while we're alive, we can prevent cancer to an extent. So some characteristics of preventing cancer includes avoid smoking, reduce sun exposure. So the sun has a way of increasing, the UV rays of the sun have a way of increasing skin cancers and melanomas. Also, do not drink a lot. So heavy drinkers are prone to types of cancers. And also eat good diets. There are certain diets that are great for reducing cancer. So these are typical ways of reducing cancer. Thank you very much.